Howdy doody. Welcome to episode 285 of TDI. This is Dr. O on the horn to start per usual. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, my best friend, and Brad Wolf superfan, Ricky Flex. How are you, my friend? He gave a great big yawn after the second episode. We are recording at 10 o'clock at night for you, the audience, the fans. How pumped are you, Ricky, to talk about episode 2 of Loki?
Hey. Let's not disrespect. Let me just say this. This is a good episode. I wasn't yawning because of the episode. All right,
YouTube doesn't lie.
I wasn't disrespecting the episode. It was a good episode. Was that as good as episode 1? No. But was it good? Yes. We'll get to everything. But I just want to make clear I'm not yawning because of the episode.
Yes, Ricky, I'll cut you some slack. All right. I know you're going to bring the energy this podcast. We do not have our MCU correspondent on, Jax. He had something come up. He's got a very busy schedule.
Tragic.
We will have him on for episode 3 next week. But Ricky Flex, we loved episode 1. I'm going to take us through where we left off, and then we're going to dive into initial reactions. So at the end of episode 1, the TVA hunters are traveling through time doors to locate Sylvie with devious intentions and seemingly to find out more answers on her encounter at the end of season 1 with He Who Remains. We also have Loki and Mobius at the end of last episode in a race with those hunters to reach Sylvie, to protect her, then also find out answers for themselves. Sylvie is in a branch timeline through a post-credit after episode 1 in 1982 Ohio, looking to start a new life after her meeting with He Who Remains. That's a lot of Sylvie. That's a lot of He Who Remains. Ricky Flex, initial reactions. You kind of gave us a glimpse with your initial statement, but what did you think about episode 2?
I liked it a lot. Okay. I'm glad we saw a powerful Loki here. Back to the god of mischief, back to having his, showing off his powers. That's what I like to see. I didn't think there was enough of that in season 1. We're getting that in this episode and episode 2. And not only that, we're seeing that old Loki charisma where that first scene, the first interrogation scene where he kind of spin zoned Brad / X5 saying like, I am a bad person. He starts leaning over him. Or even just the walk down that alleyway when Mobius got in a little trouble there, a little before that, and I think the second scene or first scene. Like, that's the type of ego I want to see from Loki, that I know I'm a know-it-all. I'm also really powerful. I'm a god. I'm a villain, basically, even though I think heavy undertones of this season being about him becoming a hero. Yeah, he's still a villain at the end of the day, and we saw a lot of that in this episode, mixed with the power. And overall, I just loved seeing Loki and Tom Hiddleston really back in his bag in the old Loki that we know, and I loved seeing that. How about you? What did you like about it?
So I'm not as high on this episode as you, Ricky Flex. I'm a little shocked by this take, but I agree. Tom Hiddleston absolutely carried during this episode. Seemed like he channeled like the old school Loki, the god of mischief, the darker take on the Loki character. We've become so accustomed to him being the protagonist and also pretty much the hero, obviously, of the self-titled series. But it's also what makes him such an intriguing character is that he's not always this good-natured fellow. He usually is not. And I think we're going to see like him embracing that as the season goes on. I felt this episode really slowed things down. And there's a lot of exposition, a lot of dialogue, a lot of like talking in rooms, whether it be interrogations or like talk about existential type of conversations alongside Moby and Loki. I thought the first episode, it was just like we hit the ground running, and this one just said, okay, let's get into the game a little bit here. Let's settle it down and set the stage. And I think there are some very exciting prospects following this episode. Teases of missed minutes, teases of like partnership with Renslayer, and then who knows if we get Victor Timely, a variant of Kang, in the next episode. I think we are kind of setting up for that prediction that Jackson and I had. But overall, it was an okay episode. We didn't get as much Sylvie as I was expecting, and I don't know if she like brought it as much. I think the screen time kind of hurt her a little bit, and her sour attitude just shining through this episode, I think, drained me with a little bit of the energy, and also a little bit much with X5. We got a lot of X5 here. I'm not sure I'm in love with this character yet, Ricky Flicks, but I guess we could still talk about Loki here because Tom Hiddleston, you got the idea that this was going to be the Tom Hiddleston episode right from that intro where he is utilizing his powers more than we've seen pretty much the entire series thus far. We have a lot of enchantment going on with Sylvie, but like what makes the god of mischief so special? Well, he's a goddamn god. And that's what we saw in that initial chase sequence with a Brad Wolf, an X5 who used his tempad to go to the sacred timeline. That scene to me was the best scene of the episode. And to see like Loki up to his tricks, him replicating himself, him showing off the horns. I thought it was amazing what they did with the shadows, holding down a Brad Wolf. I love that first scene because it just shows like, hey, this is what Loki's capable of when he has ambitions that are unmatched.
Yeah, this show kind of has underplayed his abilities and what
Yeah.
he's capable of a lot. And I think that goes also to saying because they're showing how good Sylvie is, how powerful Sylvie is at the same time, and her enchantment, you know. So I loved that. That was easily the best part of this episode. I did like the interrogation scenes as well. And you're right, there was a lot of exposition and a lot of Brad X5 in this episode. But I gotta say, there was when they got to Sylvie, I was thinking that this whole episode was gonna be like, oh, an in-betweener to get to Sylvie in episode 3. No, 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 no. There was still 18 minutes left when Sylvie made it into the picture. So they still got there and they actually incorporated Sylvie a lot more than I thought. My problem of the episode was how abrupt the stakes got at the end here and all the pruning at the end. And just like, oh, we got Lisa Aaron freaking
Docs.
freaking doxing people like out of nowhere.
Her name's Docs.
Or yeah, doxing people, doxing timelines here and branches, out of nowhere. You know, like yeah, she was a part of that like the court. I forget what they're calling them. The table.
Those in the war room.
In the war room. But she's doing this that quickly. Like set up this whole plan. Like she just had this ready to go. You know, it's just questionable. Very, very questionable how quickly this plan went into action and how she just had it in her back pocket. Like there's definitely didn't. That my point is just it was very abrupt. And then the episode ended with just them looking at this and her actually doing it. I don't know. That was literally in a span of not even 5 minutes.
It just seemed like in an episode that seemed to be setting up so much, it didn't really earn like those high stakes at the end.
Yeah,
like we
I
saw
agree with that.
With episode 1. I don't understand how time works with the TVA into the different timelines to see the time frame that X5 can go into the sacred timeline and become a movie star by the time where he's trying to, or at least the hunters are trying to find Sylvie, or at least enact this plan to blow up, right? These newly branched timelines. I just don't get it. I get it that it doesn't exist in the world of the TVA, but how is he already a movie star? I can't wrap my brain around that. It throws me off. But I do want to say, I think it was kind of appropriate for Docs to enact that type of plan to bomb out these newly branched timelines. It matches up with like, okay, like following the animosity clearly from episode 1 towards Sylvie, trying to undo the wrongs. It totally made sense, but just didn't feel like the moment was earned as much. It just felt like, oh my God, here's Docs, and she's like the classic villain at the computer, calling like hit the red button nonstop as these people are traveling through these time doors to bomb these places out, these timelines. So I agree with you, Ricky Flex. I think we could talk a little bit more about X5 here. So X5, totally different character than we saw in episode 1. I was like, is this supposed to be the menacing character who was judging Moby's jet skis like during the beginning of episode 1? that is now this like fancy pants movie star who doesn't intimidate me whatsoever after he did in the first episode. I felt like I was watching two different characters. It
Yeah.
was like kind of it was destroying my brain, Ricky.
Yeah, he was completely different. I totally forgot he was the jet ski guy until you just said it. That's how.
Different hair and everything. That's why the time doesn't really match up with me. It's kind of hazy.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll just say this: we don't have our correspondent here today, our resident Marvel expert, but I did some research on my own because we didn't have him today. So Brad Wolf in the Marvel Comics. All right, I'm just reading off the notes here. Was an actor who portrayed a serial killer named Zaniac, right? Zaniac in the movie, in the series, right? However, this guy Brad Wolf became possessed by the real Zaniac. Okay, and the real Zaniac is from a dark dimension, and this dark dimension, who sent him here? Dormammu, I've come to bargain. He was an agent of Dormammu.
Wow, what a pull, Ricky Flex.
I was gonna ask this about Jax. He wasn't here, so I had to do a little research on my own. But hey, this is pretty good. Like this guy is kind of known as Marvel's Jack the Ripper, this Zaniac guy. Kind of cool. Obviously, I don't think that's going to be the character in this series or in the
maybe
MCU.
Maybe X5 in a different timeline, maybe a variant.
Exactly. So maybe just that was a little sprinkle to us saying, hey, maybe that's why we're getting a little Brad Wolf here. Yeah, he's a good hunter. Like Mobius kept saying, he's a good hunter. Yeah, just a little sprinkle, something just to put in the back of your heads every time X5 Brad Wolf comes on the screen. Just have that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, it was just weird to see him like after that first episode, like crap in his pants, like when they are in this branch timeline in Oklahoma, 1982. Like to me, that was kind of just weird to see. Just felt like I'm watching. It truly felt like a variant. It didn't feel like the same character, even though it is the same. I thought he hammed it up a little bit, honestly, yes. And I thought like Hiddleston dominated him in the scenes that they were in that interrogation. And I didn't think that Owen Wilson brought much to the table until after that scene. And like during that interrogation, you have X5 kind of going at both Loki and Owen Wilson, playing a little bit of mind games with them. And I think after that intro scene with Loki and then having X5 challenging him in the interrogation room, I think that is like it's propelling this villainous side of Loki to come out, embrace who he truly is, especially with that comment about his mother. That seemed like that was the turning point a little bit for Loki. But then in that good cop, bad cop routine, all of a sudden, Owen Wilson, his Moby becomes almost like a bad cop. And he slaps X5. Terrible fighter, no combat skills. But to hear that, like, Moby has no intention of ever finding out more about where he came from, what timeline he's from, his family, if he has one. I just found that very interesting to see the violent reaction from Moby in that scene and to the conversation that we'll talk about a little bit later on. But what do you think about Moby, kind of little character development for him here?
Yeah, that's the key. The two key words, character development. And that's why before the interrogation, he's telling Loki to keep his cool. He doesn't keep his cool. Yeah. This whole TVA, variants, he's a variant. He's not. He's off the sacred timeline. He was kidnapped. It's getting to him. And that's what we want to see here. Definitely after it happened at the end of season 1, and particularly with him getting pruned by Renslayer, someone that he trusted, and then the second chance when he comes back and Renslayer leaving, that's definitely something where he's still dealing with, and then add on that he might be a variant or he is a variant and yada yada yada. So love to see that. But I think he's right. By the way, I think he is right. I don't know if I would want to see because again, he's right. I think the scariest thing is like everything's great and he missed everything. That would be the worst case scenario.
And yeah, I thought that conversation following the interrogation was good for character development. It's not the most exciting scene, but it does give us more insight on the Moby character. Like the series so far has been so centric on Loki and Sylvie, and basically the Loki character overall, because all these characters that appear in season 1 are just variants of Loki. They're all inherently the same
Right.
character. To have someone else dive in here, and someone that was clearly a fan favorite of season 1, that's the partner in crime, I thought that was smart. Like, I think that he's earned that moment, and I think he's earned the right to have this play out throughout this entire season. But I agree, sort of. I agree, Ricky Flex, to see where he came from, and it was such an interesting comment for him to say, "I don't want to miss out. Like, what if something bad's happening?" And he responds by, "Well, like, what if something bad's happening to his family potentially, or things are going haywire in his timeline?" He said he'd be more comfortable returning if that was the case, right? Because he's used to dealing with such dire consequences and such negative circumstances. So to like be afraid to travel back, to think that it's good, that is like the most, I don't know, such a pessimistic way of looking at life. And it just shows how he's different compared to like maybe a B-15 who wants to, right, live the life. And she seems like she is the TVA's official civil rights activist at this point. And then it seems like Moby's just more like, I want to set everyone else free, but I always want to go back to doing my thing for the TVA. I could see Moby like they're gonna have him probably reunite with his
Yes.
timeline, but like I
Get
would
on a
also,
jet ski. Like
it
it's
also,
inevitable.
you got to have that happen. But like seems like he would be very content if he just ran the TVA.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I like how there's different types of people in the TVA. Some that want to go back, some that are with docs. I'll start calling her that docs, and some that are like the civil rights like movement, like gonna be a part of this, right? Yeah, obviously you have your Owen Wilsons and whatnot. So yeah, completely agree. We look at, or what do you
You
think?
know, like you know who's gonna run the TVA by the end of this?
Loki.
OB. OB is running this bad boy. He like him. You like this also character development wise. They say like he is so much more integral to the TVA than maybe we anticipated. Right, right. He is the man that is the lowest of the low, like in terms of the floor that no one's visited for centuries, and then he is integral to making sure that Loki stops time slipping. He has the temporal loom being set in place, and he knows the ins and outs of every part of the TVA. It'd be a great, great story to see him continue on this trajectory, as long as they can find missed minutes in the next episode and use this AI to try and unlock these doors and set back the temporal loom. But I think OB's like gonna run the TVA by the end of the season.
Okay, let me say I love the out of the box thing because it's you're now it's like it's itching out on me, it's or rubbing off on me, now I'm thinking out of the box. So I think it's a good shout. I think you're wrong because I think he's been under 400 years
Shocking.
underground. He's not connected. You got to have someone connected run the TVA. But who might be his pupil? Who is up top?
Casey,
Casey. So I
fanboy.
think I think it will be the fanboy here who knows everything, who wants OB's autograph, and a little bit he knows everyone upstairs. He would be the guy that could potentially run the TVA. As
Two-headed
crazy as
monster.
it sounds.
Yeah, two-headed monster, right? Two Caesars of the TVA. And I would also throw in, let's just make it a triumvirate. And then you have two guys that are technically sound, well connected, that is a Casey. And then you have B-15, who's making sure that everyone's rights are being looked after and everyone's lives are protected. Boom, there's your triumvirate.
You got it.
Okay. Moving on here, Ricky Flex. Sylvie's return. Working at the McDonald's, we get the long-awaited reunion between Sylvie and Loki. Do you think like this interaction had the emotional payoff that you expected?
I think it was a little bit of a letdown for me. Um, I found it odd that it was just a Sylvie bombardment to Loki. I don't know. If I was Loki, I would be mad at her. She's the one that causing all these issues.
There's a lack of accountability from Sylvie right now.
Yeah, and then Loki's like, I know I'm the last person you want to see, and she goes, Yeah, you're right. It's like, how about the other way around? Or how about obviously he would never say that, but how about like, yeah, taking accountability or saying,
Loki's
yeah, I
simping a
know I
little bit,
messed
Finn.
everything up. I'm selfish. I wanted to live my own life. I wanted to have my own free will. But Loki just taking the hits
Simp.
for no reason. She got
So
what she wanted at the end of the day.
they had a difference of philosophy at the end of season 1, and I would have liked to see Loki stand his ground a little bit. I think X5 might have been a little bit right when he said that Loki's obsessed with Sylvie. He
Yeah.
is, right? And I feel like Sylvie, she put everyone in a really tough position here. Loki did not want to kill He Who Remains, and she did so, and she unleashed chaos. And what she did, obviously, like, people get to live their lives, right? A bunch of these timelines then branch off, but there's also imminent danger. There is two sides of the coin to what she did, right? And her sticking by her guns is not shocking, but to see Tom Hiddleston just absolutely like buckle at the knees when he saw her, can't be too shocked. But I mean, come on, buddy, right? We got to have some type of backbone.
I just don't. All right, let's just say, okay, he buckles at the knees. He's in love with her, friend, whatever, and he's not as mad as he should be, like we saw. Okay, fine, but for Sylvie to be as mad at him when she got what she wanted, she's the one that put him through a time loop or the time crap.
Slipping?
What's it called? Yeah, the time. Well, yeah, time slipping, but the transporting.
Time door.
Time door. Yeah.
I think that's what it's called.
She got exactly what she wanted. He just fought her for a few minutes because he said, "Hey, maybe he's right. Let's think this through before we kill him." She's that mad at him. It doesn't make that much sense. Why would she be that mad at him? It doesn't make sense.
And then she fights alongside him, right, to prevent the bombing out of these timelines, and they ultimately fail in a lot of different circumstances here. There are
But
a
hers
bunch of
is
timelines.
saved.
Hers is somehow saved. She can return and escape. And that's what I was going to say, too. She leaves Loki again at the end of this episode. And that's like a classic, inherently Loki type of move, right? To like just be a loner. Goodbye. We failed. See you later. Sayonara. But it made sense for her to leave, in my eyes. To her to see the TVA like crumbling and then failing again, and the fact that you had Dox, who was a leader of the TVA, in that war room bombing out these timelines, she's like, the TVA is exactly what I expected. And it's the same exact thing. So it makes sense for her to leave again. But I just don't want to go through this where, like, oh, we have to go grab Sylvie again in 1982 Oklahoma. Like, I've had enough in 1982 Oklahoma. Let's get to the juicy stuff here. Let's get to the
We got our McDonald's ad.
Yeah.
We talked about the milkshake.
We got our
talked
plug.
About the delicious meal.
Yeah, we got our plug. And I would be okay if we don't get Sylvie next episode. And I don't think we are going to, because I think we are heading to the Chicago's World Fair next episode, Ricky Flex, because we see in the trailer, we have this shot that's kind of a spoiler. Miss Minutes, just a massive version of Miss Minutes sailing through what looks like that time setting of 1893 Chicago World Fair. Her coming and scaring the crowd. We also have in the trailer a Renslayer still that comes out with her, looks like from that timeline. Also, post-credit scene of Quantum Media has only Moby and Loki watching this presentation from Victor Timely, which makes me think we're going to get a huge episode for episode 3. So I'm okay with like a lot of heavy exposition here, because they didn't do it in episode 1. I prefer like a bang in episode 1, explain a little bit in episode 2, and then we take off from there. It's just this episode, I'm not gonna be ranting and rave. I'm not gonna be like granting it rave reviews following. But do you think that we're on pace now with Renslayer and Miss Minutes being foreshadowed for an absolute banger?
Yeah, I think we're on the path for. All right, this episode was all about trying to find Sylvie. They found her. Didn't work out the way they expected. And the reason why OB was even in this episode was to kind of set up the next episode to talk about the rogue artificial intelligence Miss Minutes.
Cringy line.
Cringy line. Tough line there. So yeah, kind of to find her to save the timeline and TVA and whatnot. And I agree with you. I think we're getting there next episode, specifically the Chicago World Fair. Next episode seems like the right time, because we got the Sylvie cameo, or the Sylvie, not cameo, but appearance. We need a Victor Timely. We need a Kang appearance. And we can't have that be at the end. We need that because we've already seen it in a post-credit scene for Ant-Man. That needs to be earlier on in the season, because they can't be like dangling that over our heads saying, hey, like, because we've already seen it. There's going to be no surprise factor. So give it to us here, and then we'll get Sylvie at the end of the season. We'll get a Victor Timely / Kang again at the end of the season, something that we haven't seen yet, and it'll all piece together. But I think this next episode will be all about trying to find Miss Minutes because we already found Sid. We already completed that mission. The next mission is trying to save the TVA. OB, what he was saying, find the rogue AI.
Do you think it's going to be too much? Just going like to a different timeline back to the TVA, different timeline back to the TVA. Is that going to be a little? Is it going to get a little bit old? Do you like hanging around the TVA? Would you like going to these timelines and or like would you rather be on these timelines? Like what is your preference? Because honestly, like I don't mind being in the TVA as long as things are happening. That's where a lot of conversations in rooms are happening. That there's a lot of exposition building. There's a lot of mumbo jumbo tech like MCU tech language that sometimes I have to look up afterwards. I prefer to go to like these scenic type of timelines, these branches. And like even going London 1977, when I saw that and it said the main timeline, I'm like, let's go. Like this is what I'm looking for. And then like going back to Oklahoma, I'm like, okay, yeah, we saw that already. We got the McDonald's and now we're back. I just want to get to Chicago. I don't want to go back to the TVA. And as much as I love OB, right, I can only understand half the things he's saying just by not the accent, not the intention there, but more about the
No,
vocabulary
the
that's being
temporal
used.
loom and
Yeah.
everything.
Just like, okay, we got to open these doors. That's like, it just seems like we're there's so much like language that's just
Mumbo
like,
jumbo.
yeah. And then I'm just like, okay, so we need Miss Minutes to open a couple doors. Good. Let's go.
Yeah, I actually I think it's okay bouncing around because that's what happened in season one, and actually it happened a lot
Oh, that's
more.
true. Mhm.
A lot more, and I think that was even harder to kind of picture it there because we're trying to set up what is the TVA, and that was harder to kind of wrap your head around with all the everything going on. And yes, there's still a lot going on here that we don't. Yeah, you just talked about with OB and just opening doors that we have to understand, but we have a general grasp of the TVA now, so I think it's a lot easier to bounce around, and that's the second part of what I was going to say is those are the best parts. What did we talk about? The best part was in London this past episode. We got to see
Mhm.
Loki do his magic. And inside the TVA, we don't really get to see that. We see all that exposition, character building, development, that understanding, like those old moments of like, oh, this connects to that and whatnot. But the best scenes, the best action scenes are always outside the TVA.
Yeah, and I think the strength of this show is not only like the performance of like Tom Hiddleston and like the character development of Loki, but also like the set design. I think is one of the best parts about this show, and that's where it's when we go to Obi's lair down below. I'm like, that's the best scene from episode one. And here we go to London, we get a different vibe. We get the nice suits from Moby and Loki strutting, and then you get like the great like shadow and you get the horns coming out of Loki and like just a great creative design. And I don't think you get that when we're just like on the main floor of the TVA. That I think that there's just a different appeal when they go to these different spots, and what's a big part of what makes the show so great. But as we kind of like reach the end of this reactions for episode 2, Renslayer. So we have a way to track Renslayer, right? So Miss Minutes is the last person to contact Renslayer's temp pad. Uh, and we obviously have the high stakes following the end of this episode with these timelines being destroyed. Do you have any predictions regarding any of these characters we expect to see in the next episode, Flickstar?
I agree with the Victor Timely. Like,
Yeah.
because like they got the Renslayer temp pad signal, right? Casey kind of locked that down for us rather quickly, but that will let that pass. So we're gonna get that signal, and I think it's gonna be at the Chicago Fair here. As that's what I'm thinking here. And then everything will start to tie together, and I think this next episode, whatever is going to happen at that Chicago Fair, is gonna kickstart the back half of this season. Because again, I'm always this guy, but I have to stay true to my brand here. We're a third of the way through already, and after next episode, we're gonna be halfway through, and there's gonna be less than 3 hours left in this season already. So we're gonna have to pick things up. I think next episode is going to kickstart the back half of this season, get us more Kang, get us more even bigger stakes, and we'll get Sylvie back in the mix somehow.
Yeah, episode 1 felt like we were screaming down the highway, going Route 66, 90 miles an hour. Then this episode's like, oh, we take a pit stop, right? We go to the McDonald's off the highway. We take a ride into the suburbs. And episode 3 seems like we're back hitting 110 miles per hour on the highway. All right. We're riding down, hopefully, Route 66 for the next 4 episodes. Rick Star. Um, yeah, but I agree. Victor Timely, I think we get him in episode 3. And along with that, I'm just very curious. This isn't a prediction, just a question I have. How are they going to transport Miss Minutes? How are they going to get this information from this piece of rogue artificial intelligence, as Casey said, back to the TVA? I don't understand how that's exactly going to operate. Maybe they
Yeah,
need, that's why they need Renslayer. Maybe she has access to Miss Minutes and she comes back to the TVA.
yeah. I think it's going to be a Renslayer connection because we also have to get back to what I was saying earlier with the Renslayer Mobius, what had happened at the end of season 1. That has to have some sort of not resolution, but continuation in this season between the two of them and that relationship. So I think Renslayer will be the key there between the TVA, Loki, Mobius, and Miss Minutes. Renslayer will be the middleman and also the middleman to Kang slash Victor Timely.
Yeah, Victor Timely. I was gonna say, like, are we gonna see interaction between Renslayer and Victor Timely in the next episode? That would be also intriguing. Renslayer, if we are looking, I guess, big picture here, she's the centerpiece, and we haven't even seen her yet, right? When it comes to voice recording in episode 1, we get the mischievous behavior and her going through the time door in the season finale of Loki in season 1. So, and she has the connection to the AI. She has the connection to the big bad. I think she's going to become the focus of the show, and I'm excited to see what she brings to the table.